You're listening to Trek.fm.
Hello and welcome to From There to Here, Trek FM's 50th anniversary rewatch of Star Trek, in which we begin with Star Trek Enterprise and end all the way in the future with Star Trek Beyond. Today I'm your host, Lee Hutchison, and I'm joined by Zach Moore from Standard Orbit. How are you, Zach?
I'm great, Lee. I'm ready to talk about the history of life and where we come from and all kinds of deep concepts like that today.
But before that, we've got a call up from the Empire to discuss Soldiers of the Empire. Martok receives his first mission after being captured by the Dominion, and he has to go and confront the enemy that kept him hostage as they look to find a missing Klingon ship. So, Zach, what did you think of Soldiers of the Empire?
This is a good episode. It's an episode that really, as Deep Space Nine is known to do, deals with the consequences of things from previous episodes. You know, I mean, Martok had been, the real Martok had been in Dominion internment camp, you know, and for almost 3 years, and you know, this episode really serves kind of as a sequel to, you know, a couple episodes we did in our last block together, Lee, the In Purgatory's Shadow and By Inferno's Light, because this is the direct consequence of Martok's imprisonment there in those episodes. And yeah, I mean, he would be gun shy and kind of beaten down, and that's a great kind of vulnerability to show to a Klingon. When the crew's sitting around talking about Worf being on this Klingon ship, you know, Dax has to explain to him, look, Klingons they're people too, you know, they're different, they're many different personalities, and they're not just all out warriors and stuff. And I'm glad by this point in Star Trek history, they finally started to show us more aspects of Klingon culture. You know, we got the Klingon lawyer and rules of engagement. We've seen Klingon scientists now, and, you know, any society that has to function can't just be all warriors all the time. So there's that factor. And you know, it's always great to see Worf being a Klingon. You can tell he's probably getting off on this, being to be a commander and first officer of a Klingon ship finally, because that's like what he lives for. And yeah, this is a great episode to cause some real conflict between. There's not really a real villain here. The real villain is like your damaged soul, basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I always remember reading an interview with Ronald D. Moore where he was like, I really wanted to do a Star Trek version of the Klingons, and I've always watched this episode since through that prism where I look at this and I imagine it's like Star Trek Rotaran, where you get to see what it's like on a day-to-day Klingon ship, the adventures that they go on, and it's that focus that it really does feel like it, even with the kind of the shots of the Klingon ship. It reminds you of the Enterprise cut flyovers. It's such a cool concept, and they really do go with it, and I think it's particularly enjoyable because I'm a big fan of Martok, and I love this episode that he's shot shy, that he's doubting himself, because we'd all be in that position. The fact that he was a prisoner of war for 18 months, that he knows the Jem'Hadar and the Dominion perhaps better than anyone, and that instinct to think before he leaps is equally caused by, you know, the fear, the worries that he's gone through, but also by his knowledge of the Dominion that he's gathered. So that not rushing in, as Klingons love to do, is sometimes a good option, and he's fighting against that kind of culture where they want to fly in. And it's another one of these shows that you look at it, everyone always said Deep Space Nine was this like post 9/11 show in a pre 9/11 world, and you see a lot of that kind of imagery there where people are anxious to rush off into war to you know, do things before we've got all the facts, and that people are, you know, going against what Martok's saying, when really he's right most of the time, that these crew are wanting to mutiny against him, but he's right, he's on the ball.
Yeah, no, the good call out on the whole 9/11 world here, because you're right. I mean, that kind of attitude is unsustainable, as we can see in the real world, right? You can't just go in and like at the first knee-jerk reactions. You know, things require, you know, analyzation and you know, and sticking to the mission. You just can't wing it whenever you get angry, and it puts Worf in a very interesting position, because, you know, back in the Enterprise days, he's the guy like, we must fire, we must shoot first, and everybody, shields, Captain, red alert, Captain, you know, and everybody's telling him no for so many years. So Worf is usually the guy that, you know, he's looked down on for, you know, by I don't know, the Star Trek fandom or whatever. Like a joke is made out of Worf, how he's so like gun happy, let's go in there guns blazing, and you know, for the today's a good day to die. But in this episode, it actually becomes a positive. Like, he has to he's probably, dialed that down over the years, but mellowed out, being in Starfleet and with Picard and all that for so long. And now he has to dial that back up because Martok's the one who's like, no, we should proceed with caution, when really, especially at the end of the episode, it's like, look, we need to, break the rules a little bit and go in there and save these people. That was our mission. And Martok's like, oh, we can't cross the border. So that really, it's so great to see this, intentional or not. And, with Ronald D. Moore writing it, I have to think it is kind of intentional. You see it's a very organic evolution of the character of Worf from over the years. Like, and that's what's so, that's what's so refreshing or just awesome to see his character carry over from Next Gen to Deep Space Nine, because you get to see, you get to see the payoff, right? To all these years of knowing Worf over the years and seeing how he reacts in these situations. It's really fulfilling and it's rewarding. That's what I'm trying to say with Worf.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. That there's so many little bits in this episode too that really stand out. Like when they start singing the Klingon song when they go off on their mission, that it really does feel like a working ship and not just like a bunch of caricatures on this like adventure that you get just a few minutes with here and there. That you really get to see what it's like on this Klingon ship. That's not the Empire's best, that these characters have got fears, worries, doubts. They've not been a success. And I think Jadzia really is so critical in this episode that without her, this ship could easily have been doomed. That Worf was willing to, to commit failure, essentially, to lead the ship into kind of traps just because that's what the captain wanted. And Jadzia is providing that insight sometimes that, you've got to see it like this, that this crew needs a victory, this crew needs this, that you've got to do this, that she really, despite her young age, she's got all this decades and centuries of experience with the Klingons, and it really helps in this episode. It's best not to, we can't forget her important role in this.
It's great to see Dax, because this is where she really shines, with the Klingon culture, is when she's not being like, oh, I'm a scientist or something. And that's why her and Worf make such a great couple, because they understand each other so well, because of the Klingon culture. So definitely. But yeah, it's just a great episode, just a slice of life of the Klingon Empire.
Absolutely.
It reminds me of these other episodes, like, Return to Grace, actually, when, Dukat and Kira go off on a ship. And then we never come back to the station. We stay on this plot, and I think that's what the strength of this episode. It's not going back and forth. It's like, look, this is our story this week. We're sticking with it. So,
absolutely. Well, we're going to have to move on to our next episode now. Distant Origin. Dinosaurs have gone to space. So, Zach, what do you think of Distant Origin?
Now, this episode, right? In concept, it's completely ridiculous. It's absurd. It's like a parody. Almost, in concept. Okay, in concept. Do you remember the old TV show Dinosaurs? Yeah.
Yes, I do. One of the best endings ever as well.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, if you guys aren't familiar with it, look it up. It's a great show. It was with anthropomorphic dinosaurs. They have a society, they're walking around, they're having clothes. But so that's kind of, you take that idea about dinosaurs and as a modern society, and then you apply it here to the Star Trek universe, and it's absurd, but the greater story here is very well done. It raises some interesting, questions and debates that we still have today, and that we will have, I'm sure, for years to come, even in the 21st century, about, basically science versus like faith or the establishment. And, and I'll say this, I am a person of faith myself, and I find sometimes Star Trek kind of has a self-righteous atheism about it, which is annoying, to be frank, but I feel like this episode doesn't go there at all. That's not what it hammers on. It's not like, you believe in God, you're ridiculous. We all know there's no such thing. Science has disproven it. No, that's not what this episode is about. It's about, traditions and societies and doctrine and dogma keeping society from progress. And that is a very worthwhile story to tell. And there's a very good Star Trek message here.
Yeah, like for me, I am, I'm an atheist, and I believed in God as a kid, but it's a different sort of society here in Scotland. And I always loved this episode. It came at kind of that age in my life, like the kind of the late 90s, where I grew up in a religious house. Well, not a religious household, but it was just kind of staple. You go to Sunday school on a Sunday, and you maybe go along with your grandparents at Christmas time to church. And like I remember like just kind of getting to that age thinking, I don't really believe in this. And this episode kind of came along, and it blew my mind that the whole idea of dinosaurs in space is silly, but it's done incredibly well. I don't give one iota that it doesn't make sense, because that's the power of good sci-fi, that if you can create a mechanism where you invest so much in the character, the plot, I don't care about the nitty-gritty details about how dinosaurs create a spaceship. It doesn't make any difference. Don't care. It's fine. And this episode, it creates so many amazing ideas and debates and discussions that I think very few episodes of Voyager genuinely do, that we can look at some episodes and go, oh, what would we have done there? Like Tuvix or whatever, for example. And sometimes it's so superficial. It's like an argument that's kind of, okay, yeah, you can bat around for a couple minutes, but that's about it. With something like this, you can imagine sitting down, if the Babel conference was real, you're there, I'm there, everyone's there, and the amount of different ideas, passions, and excitement that would come out of this episode would be amazing. We can only discuss it for so long on this episode, but I think it's one of the most special Voyager episodes in that way, because very few of them come even remotely close to having this ambition. And I think Brannon Braga deserves a lot of credit that he gets criticized at times in Voyager for terrible episodes, but he does ambitious ideas, whether it's Threshold or this, where it's like, I'm going to do a wacky idea and we're going to just go with it, see where it kind of comes out, what kind of debates and discussions we can get out of it. And I love that. I think it's bold, it's exciting, and those are words I rarely get to attach to Voyager. So, no matter what I think about this episode in terms of religion, doctrine, the establishment, I just love what it does in the Voyager canon.
Yeah, absolutely. This episode is about something, and that's something that, a lot of Voyager episodes, they're just about the anomaly of the week or the holodeck. But this episode has a point, and like you said, when it's done, it sits with you, and you're like, man, like, how are we as a society if this is what's going on here? And the best, science fiction, it's a mirror back into like your own life and your own society, and that's that's why Star Trek became such a prolific franchise, because back in the 60s they were doing that. They just subverting the pop culture or the popular culture, the popular beliefs. So in addition to that, the story is it's very well told, right? We start from the first third of this episode is completely from the perspective of the aliens, right? To the point like they're doing captain's logs
with the dinosaurs. Yeah.
The direction here is so good. David Livingston directed this episode, and it just has such a artistic flair to it. We have kind of off-kilter shots, Dutch angles. We have extreme close-ups, some interesting camera moves. I don't know what it was about why they decided to approach this episode differently than other episodes, but just the camera has so much life to it, that we don't see in a lot of static late 90s Star Trek direction.
And I suppose it comes from the quality of the writing as well. When you probably look at a lot of scripts for Voyager, for example, you've got quite a static thing. You've got a spaceship. How many times can you shoot the bridge? And all these different ideas. And sometimes when you've got a good script like this, where you think, they've been bold and ambitious, I'm going to go along with that too. I'm going to try some wacky ideas and concepts that sometimes your direction is only as good as the script and how it inspires you. And if you've got a kind of bland episode about a nebula, where sometimes is the incentive to be visually imaginative with the camera, I think there's definitely inspiration to be had in the script from all departments. Everyone seems to just have a great time with this episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, whenever one department kind of steps his game up, everybody else is like, oh man, well, this is a good one, we got to step our game up too. So it's really infectious.
Absolutely. Have you got anything else you'd like to say about Distant Origin? I know we could probably go all day talking about Distant Origin.
We probably could. I guess just as one final thought, no matter what your belief system is or all that, I think you come to this episode with an open mind and you think about it, how it relates to our society with an open mind, and it's gonna connect. It's gonna cause some interesting ideas to fire off in your brain, and it creates good conversations. So hopefully, if you want to have the good conversation, you have someone in your life to talk about with, or if not, come to the Babel conference and we'll be sure to talk about it there, because I'm sure, as you said, Lee, everybody brings their own point of view to this kind of big concept, and you can have some great discussion with it. And that's what's great about any fiction, when it can cause you to have such deep discussion about meaningful things in life. It did its job, and this episode definitely did its job.
Absolutely. Well, we've batted that one over to you at the Babel conference, so we look forward to reading your comments on this. So, Zach, if people want to talk to you about the amazing TV program Dinosaurs, where can they find you on the internet?
Well, you can find me here every week on Standard Orbit, our original series podcast. On Twitter, I'm at MooreOnZach. That's MooreOnZach. And I'm also the host of my own podcast, Always Hold On to Smallville, where we talk about each and every episode of that young Superman show. We're on Twitter at Always Smallville with one S. What about you, Lee?
Yeah, you can find me at Lee_Nostromo at Star Trek VHS, where I share Star Trek VHS artwork, if we didn't guess that from the Twitter handle. And you can find me on my own podcast, The Senate Floor, where we discuss movies, pop culture, and everything in between. Unfortunately, we've not discussed dinosaurs yet, but we have discussed Jurassic Park, and I'm excited to see them go off into space in Jurassic World 2, so we'll talk about that next year. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We're looking forward to seeing your thoughts in the Babel Conference. Live long and prosper.